There's this fallacy out there that some people believe that if you're male, that you were automatically born into privilege. And the reality is, other than maybe being born physically stronger than most females, in my own life, I don't see how there's been specific privilege or preference. In fact, I feel the opposite. That's why I bring some of these issues up relating to discrimination, whether it's based on how you think or whether it's based on other factors. Now, without getting into those things or my own personal experiences, let us say that I've grown up in my life struggling and without privilege. And one of the reasons I want to write a book about my life is to share my story, where I came from, what my childhood was like, those dark years that I was in between 1999 and 2003, and that how that turned into this soul-searching experience, and 9/11 had happened. And for a lot of you that are familiar with my work, you know how personal that was and why. And then I ended up in the alternative media around 2004, 2005, and my life was never the same. And here I am 10 years later, and I am basically a starving artist, spoken word, YouTuber, philosopher, social commentator. I don't really enjoy the label conspiracy theorist, but I certainly consider myself a researcher of things that do involve conspiracies. I also like to provide a spiritual perspective on current events. And I certainly have some pretty strong opinions about the evil behind the New World Order. So strong, in fact, that I certainly speculate that we are on a planet where many different levels of spiritual warfare are taking place, and that for those of us that are on this path of trying to expose certain things, our life on Earth is not exactly very privileged. So even though I share a little bit of myself there, I take it personal, even though I shouldn't, when someone assumes that I was born into privilege, when in reality, because of who I am, because of the things that I speak of, because of my confident tone when I talk about certain subjects that other people are really turned off by even hearing about or knowing about. And then, of course, there are some people that are tribalistic, some people in this world that have racist leanings, and I've had my fair share of experiences. And let's just leave it at that. So there is this fallacy that's going around that if you're male, that you were born into privilege. There's also another misunderstanding that some people have, that if you're not black and you don't seem to be Hispanic, that you're automatically white. And that comes with certain connotations. It's important, by the way, as people start getting defensive and feeling like they're being targeted, that people understand that many different groups are being targeted at this time. And I don't feel that there is one racial group that's behind it, including white people. I sense an evil behind it. And that evil has full influence over the politicians, over geopolitics, the things that are taking place right now, over the media, and the type of stuff that's embedded in it, and certain things that are on the internet. Humans are easily influenced, and in many ways, humans are doing the bidding of dark forces. So there's an agenda to create a race war on the planet, as well as maintain these gender wars. So they want to keep us in this mental state of being pissed off all the time, and assuming that the other group is privileged and they've got all these things. Now, I am discussing in a certain way female privilege, but I'm not using that terminology. I don't think I've used that terminology, female privilege. But I've discussed, because of how lustful societies become, how there is in many ways a preference for certain women in the workplace. But in no way, shape, or form do I think that the lives of women are being improved, that they're truly privileged. I think that they're being led into a trap, and that the governments of the world and the evil behind it is preparing us for something. Humanity is being prepared for something. And so if we're divided, if we're hating each other, if we're assuming everybody else is privileged, that racial group, that country, that gender, that religion, constantly blaming, then we're divided. Then we're stuck in the illusions of separation, just blaming other people for our problems. When in reality, we got to come together. as individuals, we have to do the work that it takes to be willing to work with others in our community, or provide leadership, or provide insight, or provide and share information, or to teach. This is what we need: a renaissance. More than a so-called revolution. We need a renaissance of people that are beyond the illusions of separation, people that understand the oneness concept, people that truly follow the non-aggression principle in all their affairs. Was my ancestor privileged? Khwaja Abdullah Ansari, who also lived in exile in the 11th century in Afghanistan. Are the Afghan people privileged that are living in squalor in Afghanistan today, being drone attacked? You know, it's interesting learning about my ancestor. I haven't read this book yet, but it appears that he lived in exile, and multiple times the ruling forces at that time, which I don't know a lot about, but it's going to be interesting. It's already a journey just thinking about the parallels and you know, suspecting the parallels between myself and this ancestor prior to this, and then getting some information going, okay, so this guy had a whole different view on spirituality than the consensus reality at that time. And at that time, people thought he was a freak because of it. And they even tried to shut him up in his late 30s. And here I am, 34, 35, for the most part. I haven't had anybody try to shut me up, but I've dealt with being socially exiled. But we live in a reality where the possibility of people being shut up in various ways does exist. And so, you know, I think about the parallels between the past and the present, and there's probably more than one reason that I feel like connection to my ancestor. But that aside, I think that as men, we are being taught to hate ourselves. Certain racial groups around the planet are being taught to be ashamed of themselves and to be afraid that we might frighten somebody, or to be afraid that we're going to experience racism or something like that. You know, yeah, there's also that propaganda that's also going on. Be afraid. The media's coming after you. The New World Order is going to come get you. There's drones watching you. You know, the propaganda is working in many different sophisticated ways to provoke a reaction, to create more fear. And I think this is a time for men to really contemplate what it means to be a man. Men need to ask themselves why we're being demonized. Men should not be asleep at the wheel at this time. They should not be allowing themselves to be mind controlled, to be controlled by women, especially when they're unconscious women that are not truly very loving, regardless of how physically attractive they may look in that flower dress, as they curl their hair and smile and spin around and release some of those pheromones that so easily hypnotize the Homo sapien male. Men need to contemplate what it means to be men, and to have morality, to have goodness, to be a protector, to be a real warrior. And I don't want to sound like I'm getting into crusade language, a warrior god, but we're missing spirit. You need spirit. People need spirit. People need to have that true faith when they're going up against these dark forces, that they are in the right, that they are in the true light, not the false one, as there are many that have been misled by all these false lights of our world. So, those are some of the things that I want to think about. You're seeing people that are being hypnotized by this fallacy that if you are male, you're automatically being born into privilege. And in many ways, men are being demonized. And people should be honest with themselves and ask, why is that taking place? What are they trying to prepare us for? And then from there, move into solution mode. Don't stay stuck in the depression. What do we need to do to use our God-given, if you will, masculine attributes or capabilities to mold the world or shape the world or change the world into a more positive one, because we are affecting the world and the world is affecting us. And the question is it going to be a positive outcome if we're just going on autopilot, letting the world affect us? At what point do we try to affect the world together and try to see more positive changes come about from this world of enslavement that we are waking up in now? All right, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching.